the enigmatic culture of ancient Egypt. This was once the site of the pharaoh's largest and most glorious temple. The Egyptians considered it to be the cradle of the world. It's here that the gods are said to have given the pharaohs their dominion. Many obelisks decorated their temple city. Today, they are scattered all over the world. This most important temple served as a template for the famous sanctuary in Karnak. After 3,000 years, the city of temples suddenly declined. But why? Archaeologists are running out of time to excavate ancient Egypt's holiest site. The megacity of Cairo looms ever closer, threatening to eventually build over the remaining relicts. The City of the Sun became a myth with the name the Greeks gave it, Heliopolis. Cairo, Egypt's pulsating metropolis. Hidden under its streets lies one of ancient Egypt's best-kept secrets, Heliopolis, City of the Sun. Nobody knows just what the pharaoh's holiest city once looked like. An Egyptian-German team is searching for remains of the fabled Sun City. It is said to have contained the country's largest and most significant temple. Ayman Ashmawi and Dietrich Rauer are leading this emergency dig. It's a race against time. New buildings are about to spring up here, apartments for the ever-increasing population. And then Heliopolis will be lost forever. It's a dream come true for Dietrich Rauer and his team.
In 2011, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities informed me that following the revolution, pressure was mounting regarding the temple site, and that any help would be appreciated. Heliopolis is a place we know a lot about from inscriptions, from other locations, but little from the site itself. As an Egyptologist, finding yourself able to research this cultural center with its 3,000 years of history is the best thing that can happen to you.
Most of what was once Sun City has long been covered over. It's almost a miracle that this area has remained accessible. But digging in the Mataria district is far from easy for the archaeologists.
We are, as a mission here, one of the most challengeable missions in the work. Most of the missions in Egypt and the sites are far away and on the edge of the desert or in the midst even of cultivations. You don't have such interaction between the buildings, the people, and you work in the midst of all this. You need first to control your archaeological and scientific work, but also you be clever in communicating and how to control and accept and people and try to live together in a proper way.
This is all that remains of the temple's city's former glory, a stone obelisk, 20 meters in height, the last of about 30 of its kind. It stands today where it was erected almost 4,000 years ago, at the entrance to a holy site. Like Cairo today, Heliopolis was located in a strategically favorable position at the entrance to the fertile Nile Delta. It was from here that they controlled vast agricultural areas. Important trade routes intersected here. March 2017. On the site where the temple of Ramesses the Great used to stand, archaeologists find remnants of a colossal statue. It must have stood directly in front of the entrance, a find that makes waves and headlines around the world. Excavation and transport pose a challenge. The gigantic torso is transported through Cairo at night. The capital's daytime traffic would be impossible to navigate for the truck. The fragments of the colossal statue have found a new home in the gardens of the Egyptian Museum on Tahrir Square. It is here we discover just whom Dietrich Schrauer has found.
From the start, the style of the statue suggested it didn't fit the period of Ramesses II or any other king. This was confirmed by the inscription on the back. It's original and hasn't been reworked, with one of his 5 names, Neb-A, Master of Energy. This name is exclusively used to describe Psamtik I, which made the identity certain.
Psamtik I, 26th dynasty. Egypt had ceased to be a major power by the 26th dynasty. The north is controlled by the Assyrians and their governor Psamtik. The south has been conquered by the Nubians. It is Psamtik's goal to reunite the north and south, Upper and Lower Egypt, to reanimate the glorious past. He succeeds in this seemingly impossible task, becomes pharaoh and the founder of a new dynasty. Psamtik immortalizes himself in Heliopolis.
While Psamtik, thanks to his deft politics, rules all of Egypt, he must go to Heliopolis to ask the creator god for support. He follows the tradition of King Ramesses II by placing his own colossal statue amongst the effigies of former kings.
On the site in Mataria, workers are drilling windows into the past. Geomorphologist Morgan de Dapper is working to discover just how things used to look here. Ordinary digs are no longer possible. The groundwater table is too high.
This is a mixture of floodplain, silt and clay. There is also some charcoal. So this is man-made. We have to do with mud brick material.
It was used to build houses and surrounding walls. What else did the ancient Egyptians leave behind? This time they drill to a depth of 1 meter.
We have a lot of flakes of limestone, there is charcoal, heterogeneous, and here starts sediment which is natural, so it comes from the flooding of the Nile. So this is man-made, this is nature.
They drill into the earth one last time. At a depth of 4 meters, they come across a very special layer. The workers have discovered a sand dune. It is 15,000 years old.
I can already make a reconstruction of that original island that very slowly was flooded by the Nile sediments, of the floodplain sediments. So originally, I think, for the first people living here, this was an enormous hill. In a flat landscape, something which is 10 meters high. Must have been fantastic. So that's the origin of Heliopolis.
The primordial hill? According to Egyptian belief, this is where the world originated. In the beginning, there was only the primordial ocean, and Atum, the first god, who has always existed, the hidden, the unknown. Atum raised the primordial hill from the water, thus creating the land. Atum did not remain the only one for long. From himself, he created the first godly couple, Shu, god of air, and Tefnut, god of humidity. They begat Geb, god of the earth, and Nut, goddess of the sky. They rule the world together with their children, Osiris, Isis, Nephthys, and Seth. It was not until later they gave dominion to the pharaohs.
Heliopolis is where the primordial material is celebrated, resulting in the idea that the kingdom is both just and justified, as it is a direct heir to the creator God himself.
This myth of creation is soon linked to the sun god. Heliopolis is of particular importance for each of the pharaohs. Even prior to the construction of the Great Pyramids, the city constituted the country's spiritual center. The Egyptians believed that the sun god traveled in a boat across the sky, bringing both light and life. It's a perilous journey because the snake-like dragon is out to destroy the god.
Rituals accompanied the path of the sun from dawn until dusk. Their aim was to articulate a successful journey, to encourage the sun god to reach a successful outcome. There are some critical moments: the depth of the underworld at midnight, the zenith of the heavens at noon, times at which the sun's enemy, the dragon, is slain. But that proves futile. He keeps coming back.
9 kilometers from Heliopolis, the Fatimides founded the city that became Cairo in around 1000 after Christ. Those searching for remnants of the Sun City can find them here. Dietrich Rauer and his Belgian colleague Simon Connor regularly discover building materials from Heliopolis in the old city walls. On this stone, a hand is still clearly visible.
The royal scepter. Ramesses II is making sacrifices. The stone is quartzite, typical for him at Heliopolis.
With the decline of the pharaohs, Heliopolis becomes a quarry for new structural projects. Stones from the temple of Ramesses II were sought after building material for the Fatimides, as it was for later conquerors. We can only guess how much material from Heliopolis was used to build Cairo. Prior to the Egyptian-German team's emergency dig, there were hardly any finds worth mentioning, with one exception. Egypt, 1903. The temple city stands in an open field. The Italian archaeologist Ernesto Schiaparelli is digging near the obelisk. He's searching for the sun god's large temple. He finds walls of clay bricks and numerous artifacts. Schiaparelli's finds are now in Turin. Some are on display. Most of them are in storage in the Egyptian Museum's collection. They're important puzzle pieces for Dietrich Rauer as he tries to piece together an image of Heliopolis. One of the artifacts is amongst the oldest depiction of a god in human form. Federica Ugliano is responsible for these finds. These pieces are from a shrine. It contains the effigy of a god. On the outside, the pharaoh, at least in part.
You can see the detail of a leg of the pharaoh that is performing the so-called ritual run to celebrate his jubilee, and a small female figure you can see just on the left of the leg of the pharaoh, and is his daughter.
As unassuming as these fragments appear, they offer valuable clues to the archaeologists.
It's the first proof that we have of the building activity of a pharaoh. So with Djoser, we are just at the beginning of the third dynasty. So early in the Egyptian history, we already have pharaohs that are really interested in Heliopolis, in this site, that recognize the religious importance of the site. So they decided to build monuments or dedicate little shrines to the gods.
Djoser, Third Dynasty. Pharaoh Djoser left us the oldest pyramid. a towering tomb built by his architect Imhotep. Later, he too is deified. Imhotep is not merely an ingenious master builder. His title, the Great Observer, tells us he was also high priest of Heliopolis. As such, he guards the secret sciences. To understand earthly powers, they observe the sky and thus become outstanding astronomers. By tracing the movements of the stars, they develop a calendar, subdivide the years into weeks and months, day and night into hours. The priests can predict crucial events, such as the flooding of the Nile, by the position of the star Sirius in the night sky. In Turin's Museo Ugizzio, Dietrich Rauer is examining another significant find from Heliopolis. This stone tablet is a sensation amongst Egyptologists. It's marked with the ground plan of a temple. Only very few such depictions showing how temples were designed have survived to the present day.
We think that this is the plan of one of the temples that were inside the big walls that was surrounding the Temenos area of Heliopolis.
The temple was probably founded under Sesostris I and subsequently expanded. Thanks to these markings, we know the floor plan, which in turn allows us to draw conclusions regarding other temples. There were 3 inner courtyards, each with a massive gateway decorated with flagpoles.
This temple must have been a very large sanctum, a great and holy sanctuary. The temple district is massive and might have been located in various areas we have not yet excavated. But given the names of Sesostris I and Thutmosis III, we would probably have to go into the central temple district, an area in which large portions also remain unexplored.
The undeveloped area in the center of the city is vast. Archaeologists have only been able to cut into certain key areas. Considering the sum of the yellow areas, researchers have only excavated a fraction of the ancient city of the sun. By far, the larger part lies buried under Cairo's buildings. Area 221. Initially, archaeologists had to shift meter-thick layers of debris. Only then could they begin their work. This is where Dietrich Rauer and Christopher Brenninek suspect that one of the large main temples of the City of the Sun was located, from the time of Ramesses the Great. The position of each find is meticulously recorded in the hope of resurrecting Heliopolis. The City of the Sun constitutes the largest temple complex ever constructed in Egypt. Thanks to their digs and old maps dating back to Napoleon's time, Dietrich Rauer and Claude Dietze are able to determine the exact position and size of Heliopolis. The temple city covered an area of approximately 1 square kilometer. In the lower part, they were able to reconstruct 2 temples of Ramesses. A large wall encircled the City of the Sun. A processional avenue ran along the front of the temples of Ramesses. The researchers also find remnants of the temple that once stood behind the obelisk. But something irritates them. The orientation of the temple is unusual.
The position of the obelisk has not changed. The dromos, the processional avenue into Heliopolis, does not follow the usual east-west orientation, but is significantly slanted. Naturally, we wondered why.
Sesostris I, 12th dynasty. Sesostris I and his father ruled together for 10 years. Then, the father is murdered. In the 3rd year of his reign after his father's death, Sesostris I summons his architects and counselors. He intends to construct a magnificent temple in Heliopolis dedicated to the sun god. Nothing is to be left to chance in the plans for a sanctum, and its orientation is particularly important. It normally runs along the east-west axis, as is prescribed by the sun cult. The building commences with the ritual of the tightening of the rope. This temple, however, is built with a marked deviation towards the north. What was the reason? Did the pharaoh neglect to consider the sun? With the aid of a computer program, French archaeologist Luc Gabold happens upon a surprising answer. The day on which the sun rose directly over the temple was February the 26th, 1936 before Christ.
It was the day after the 2nd anniversary of his father's assassination. He decided to summon all his court and to inform them of his ambitious endeavor, a new reconstruction of Heliopolis' great temple.
The Great Temple is only the first step in a gigantic building program. Sesostris endows Heliopolis with new splendor. In the south of the city, the sacrosanct area of the gods. The northern part is home to the mortals. It contains the king's palace, the houses of the priests and their families. It's a city with thousands of inhabitants.
Madka from Heliopolis writes to her sister Irit in the city of the south. I wish you life, strength, and health. How are you? Every day I pray to Atum, Lord of Heliopolis, that you may be well, that he may protect you.
It is a unique document written by a woman from the city of the gods. A testament to the importance that Egyptians pay to the blessing of the sun god. The letter accompanies a valuable gift, a flower arrangement blessed in the great temple dedicated to Atum. Its postal path stretches 650 kilometers upriver to Thebes, the city of the south, where Irit lives. Today, the main temple in Thebes is an impressive ruin surrounded by the city of Karnak. Few are aware that the complex was modeled after Heliopolis during the period of the Middle Kingdom. Thebes around 2100 before Christ. It's from this city that a prince manages to reunite the fragmented Egypt under a new pharaoh. He founds a new dynasty and erects a magnificent temple for the god of his city, the shrine of Amun-Re.
All legitimacy necessarily derived from Heliopolis. The kings of the Middle Kingdom needed a theology that required a sun being at its center. So they borrowed the idea of the hidden god of Heliopolis and merged him with the sun god, thus creating Amun-Re.
Amun-Re was, on occasion, put on the same level with Atum, the creator and sun god of Heliopolis. This elevated the smaller local god to a more prestigious position. The celestial path of the sun was instrumental in aligning structures in Karnak too. The architects wanted to create a link between the worldly and divine spheres. That was the function of the obelisks. Originally, they were invented in Heliopolis. Ramesses II immortalized himself by erecting these pillars in the honor of the sun god.
The obelisks are a sun element, which link the earth to the celestial realm of the gods. Writings dating from the epoch of Hatshepsut are very clear on the matter. They state that the obelisks were built to pierce the highest realm of the sky with their points, the place considered to be the home of the gods.
A purposeful effort was made to expand the capital and the royal residence of Thebes during the Middle Kingdom. But the worship of its many gods brings forth a pharaoh who wants to radically change the world of the Egyptians. He will close the temple of Amun-Re and attempt to obliterate all the cultic rituals. But this king too will pay obeisance to Heliopolis. Akhenaten, 18th dynasty. For Akhenaten, there was only one single god, the cult of Aton, the sun disk. He had effigies of many other gods destroyed, but did not touch Heliopolis. On the contrary, he built there.
Akhenaten understood that the entire Egyptian concept of the world and the state revolved around the sun. The sun god was not merely the most important of the gods, he was essentially the only god. Akhenaten traced this Egyptian cosmology and political science back to its origins in Heliopolis.
Even the heretic king Akhenaten makes sacrifices in the City of the Sun to stay in contact with the gods, observing established rituals. In this place, the cradle of the world, where the gods gave the pharaohs dominion over the earth, the priest and the pharaoh personally sacrifice to the gods. They do so to ensure their own prosperity, and that of their country and the people. There are 50 stations firmly established generations ago that must be observed during the daily sacrificial rites. When, in around 700 before Christ, the Nubians conquered Egypt from the south, the first black pharaoh, Pi, observes the holy rites in Heliopolis. He too has to present himself to the City of the Sun in order to be recognized as king. Pi requires legitimization from the sun god, as he's no direct heir to a rightful pharaoh. He's not even Egyptian. He is an outsider who wants to rule.
Something new begins with him in the 25th dynasty. And such a break requires validation by ritual. A continuity needs to be established, and only rites can do that. So he observed these rites in Heliopolis, and thus showed himself to be the rightful king.
The breaking of a new day must have been an awe-inspiring sight. More than 30 obelisks, their points presumably covered in gold, caught the first light and flooded the temple in the divine rays. One particular pharaoh left us with a great number of statues. Ramesses II, 19th dynasty. On this stone slab, Ramesses describes how he has rewarded his stonemasons for their work.
Here, king of Upper and Lower Egypt, User-Matwa, Setep-en-Ra, son of Re, Ramesses, beloved by Amun, he himself speaks, "O you laborers,
you chosen and skillful craftsmen, who are erecting numerous memorials for me, hard-working and diligent, so that I may furnish all the temples I have built. For you, I have filled the warehouses with bread, cake, meat, and sandals. I have provided for you in every way possible, so that you will work for me with love in your hearts."
On the slab Ramesses also imparts how he made his way to the stonemasons to bring them gifts. An incredible honor. The earthly descendant of the sun god visits them in person. With his gifts, the king wants both to cheer his workers on and to improve their sustenance. Ramesses not only praises them, he provides for them. This secures their loyalty, and he has big plans. Ramesses II is a pharaoh of superlatives. He reigns over the land of the Nile for 67 years. 3 generations of subjects know only him as their king. For the craftsmen, these are good times. No other pharaoh has as many temples and memorials built, redesigned, or improved. Ramesses is the greatest builder in ancient Egypt. But his gigantic structures in Heliopolis have not stood the test of time. A new structure is being built within sight of the pyramids, the Grand Egyptian Museum. It's soon to house the world's largest Egyptian collection. In the entrance, the statue of Ramesses the Great welcomes arriving visitors. The preparations for the opening are in full swing. The legendary treasure from Tutankhamun's tomb is being restored. It will dazzle in its renewed splendor. There are further finds from new digs. Some are artifacts from Heliopolis. The statues from the City of the Sun are hewn from a particular quartzite rock. It comes from a quarry in the vicinity of the temple city, the very material used for the statue of Psamtik.
This is the left ear, or this, from the lower part, is exciting. It changes color. The stone is beige at the top. Towards the middle, it becomes dark brown, and near the base, it turns pink. These are natural color shifts that happen in the Jebel Amr quartzite. Here we have a big toe from the royal statue.
Over 6,500 fragments of the colossal statue have been recovered. Isa Sidan, director of the restoration department, has an ambitious plan for the inauguration.
This is our target, to bring all fragments, all parts from the statue and reassemble it again and display as a one piece, as one statue in the galleries of Grand Egyptian Museum.
So far, the upper torso of the 10-meter statue has only been virtually reassembled. What the archaeologists found on other fragments surprised them.
The first fragments were part of the upper body, yellowy brown quartzite, very well preserved. So it was surprising to find that the fragments from the lower body showed traces of soot. There was evidence of immense heat, which is how we can be sure that the statue was intentionally destroyed by fire, a fire that started around the legs.
Upon Psamtik's death, the sun darkens. An evil omen. Around 525 before Christ, Egypt is under threat. The Persians attack, destroying cities and villages. Heliopolis is no exception. The Persians plunder the temple city and make away with plenty of loot. We can infer this from excavations in the market district of the temple area. Animal bones are found in surprising numbers. This seems to indicate extensive stable blocks in which the animals were kept. American Egyptologist Louise Bertini specializes in animal remnants. it is immediately clear to her that these are all bovine bones, more specifically from young animals. Cows were particularly valuable in Egypt. Only such a large and important culture site as Heliopolis could have afforded such numbers of them.
Temples very much were not just cultic activity to help to basically feed to keep the cult going, but also that you can think of it as a little microeconomy in a way, because various goods would be stored at the temple, animals would be property of the temple, so even if they were being slaughtered, possibly for ritual offering, they could also be used to be sold and actually help to make money for the temple. And it was in many ways part of this whole redistributive economy that was quite common throughout ancient Egypt, but would have been especially prevalent here because this was such a major cult center.
In the aftermath of the Persian attacks, cultic rituals resumed. Not far from the bovine remains, researchers find numerous sacrificial offerings. Kings and priests perform rituals, and large celebrations attract people from all over Egypt. This is evident from the large ceramic vessels dedicated to the sun god. To archaeologist Clara Dietze, these sacrificial offerings indicate something else. The Persians were not the only ones to have devastated the city of the sun.
We can clearly prove that large parts of the temple had already been destroyed before the late period. But who was responsible? That is of great interest and something we are still trying to work out. And yet, another Renaissance follows, and with it a rebirth of the Temple of Heliopolis.
Researchers are looking for relics of this Renaissance in the southwest part of the city. They're looking for a specific temple from the late period, the last one to be built here. Nectanebo the First, 30th dynasty. A new dynasty begins with Nectanebo, but it will not prevail for long. His grandson, Nectanebo II, will be the last Egyptian pharaoh. This block is part of the so-called Gao tablets. They show the country's administrative districts and specify the goods produced in each of them. The blocks were attached to the external temple wall. To date, archaeologists had only seen their counterparts for administrative districts in Upper Egypt.
The blocks for Upper Egypt were found in a row, 30 meters from here in this direction. And now we have the blocks for Lower Egypt, for the northern parts of the country, which has given us some insight into the length, breadth, and depth of the temple for the first time. This is exactly what we'd hoped for in this project.
At the outer edge of the temple complex, archaeologists happen upon another structure commissioned by Nectanebo. A gigantic wall made of clay bricks, 17 meters across and approximately 12 to 20 meters high. That's twice as high and deep as the Great Wall of China. It turned the temple complex into a fortress, since attacks by hostile powers were becoming ever more frequent. But not all foreigners come with hostile intentions. The 1,000-year-old religious center is also a destination for the tourists of antiquity. The Greeks consider the City of the Sun the cradle of an ancient culture. The life houses there, connected to the temple, are early universities. Priests studied here, documented their findings on papyrus, handed down their knowledge. They created important tracts and handbooks for rituals. Heliopolis also stands for knowledge, even wisdom. This in particular is what attracts scholars from abroad. Purportedly, even famous Greek philosophers and thinkers came to Heliopolis in order to study the wisdom of the Egyptians, among them Pythagoras, Eudoxus, and Plato. Later, the Greeks will appropriate this knowledge.
We can assume that the lifehouse, that is to say the temple's library, was very extensive. And there is also the question of whether the Library of Alexandria, which we know housed old Egyptian manuscripts, might have contained parts of the Heliopolis temple's collection. Perhaps the Library of Heliopolis eventually migrated there. This is only a theory, but I think it has a lot going for it.
Alexandria. Alexander the Great conquers Egypt in 332 BC. After his death, Macedonian and Greek Ptolemies ruled the land. It's only from descriptions that we can imagine the splendor of Alexander's White City. But one thing is certain. Here at the port stood sphinxes that had come from Heliopolis, since the Ptolemies furnished their city with monuments from the City of the Sun. Near the old citadel, Dietrich Rauer has a clear view of a place that hits something astonishing. At the bottom of the harbor, French underwater archaeologists discover chiseled blocks with ancient Egyptian inscriptions. In antiquity, they were destroyed by a powerful earthquake and catapulted into the sea. For the first time, it becomes clear just how many monuments the Ptolemies appropriated and transported to Alexandria. Dietrich Rauer and Simon Connor are searching for effigies and monuments from Heliopolis. Original inscriptions are still recognizable on many statues. On this sphinx, for instance, the Egyptian name for Heliopolis is clearly visible, Iunu.
In Alexandria, we mainly rediscovered sphinxes from Heliopolis. So many of them, but different types and materials and dimensions. They did not line an avenue, they are too different for that. But there must have been incredible numbers of sphinxes. They were part of the core decorations of the City of the Sun.
The Serapeum, a Ptolemean shrine. Here too, Dietrich Rauer and Simon Connor come across old acquaintances that hail from Heliopolis. This block depicts Ramesses. He's sacrificing to the sun god. Over the centuries, many monuments fell victim to earthquakes. Some were systematically destroyed. Both head and beard of this sphinx has been carefully removed.
Deux possibilités. Soit there are two possibilities. Either the statue was decapitated during the time of the pharaohs, the time of the Greeks and Romans, because it was needed as a block in a wall. In that case, you would first need to neutralize its magic by removing head and beard. It was treated like a living object. Or the Christians were the culprits. The statue was in the Serapeum, a place where Christians and pagans fought in the 5th century. It may have been the early Christians who knew about the culture of the pharaohs, and while they no longer believed in the Egyptian gods, they did still believe a little in the magic of the statue.
The Ptolemies removed more than just sphinxes from Heliopolis. They also dismantled the obelisks and reassembled them in Alexandria. In the year 31 BC, the Romans conquered Egypt. The Roman emperors have the stone giants transported back to Rome, which becomes the city with the most obelisks. 5 of them are from Heliopolis. Modern European powers like France and Great Britain also crave ancient Egypt's impressive sun catchers towards the end of the 19th century. They become an emblem of global power. 2 20-meter-high obelisks from Heliopolis stood in Alexandria for centuries, the so-called Cleopatra's Needles. The Egyptian government makes gifts of the massive 180-ton objects to England and to the United States. The obelisks from Heliopolis are now scattered all over the world. Over 3,000 years ago, Heliopolis was the most significant cultural site in the land. Nonetheless, both Ptolemies and Romans dared to loot its treasures. One of Italian archaeologist Ernesto Schiaparelli's finds could help explain why. At the beginning of the 20th century, he made an unusual discovery. It is a petrified sea urchin with a minuscule inscription. A fossil such as this one was considered a miracle of nature in ancient Egypt, so it was offered up to the sun god. Frederica Ugliano has studied it in detail.
And here we can read, found south to the Ik by the priest Cha-Nefer.
Ik, according to the archaeologists, is a quarry close to Heliopolis. This is where priest Cha-Nefer found the fossilized urchin, and he takes it to the temple. Before offering it up to the sun god, he eternalizes himself with these incisions. This proves how valuable and significant this find was for the priest. Researchers can no longer determine just when Cha-Nefer sacrificed his treasure. But the location of the find could be a clue to finding an answer to the question of just what happened in Heliopolis. In the lair in which the urchin was discovered, many more broken fragments are found. Not a single find is undamaged. All of them show evidence of systematic destruction. By and by, the researchers arrive at a theory to explain the demise of the City of the Sun.
In the end, Alexandria is the political capital, while Memphis turns into the spiritual capital in the north. Heliopolis becomes obsolete, quite quickly in fact, which is why the Ptolemies, these kings of Greek descent, no longer did anything in Heliopolis. That is surprising and begs an explanation. Perhaps one of the final destructions of the temple was so devastating that they simply gave up on the holy site.
Perhaps the worship of the sun was no longer paramount for the Ptolemies, and Heliopolis lost its importance. Before the priests finally abandoned their city, they amassed the broken and fragmented offerings and statues and buried them, as everything that has been consecrated by the gods is sacrosanct and must never leave the temple district. This even applies to the petrified urchin. Even so, Heliopolis was not entirely abandoned. At least, that's what another unexpected find made by the archaeologists in the business area seemed to suggest. While excavating, Clara Dietzer comes across several large ovens. Near them lie small lime splinters, peculiar objects from the Ptolemaic time that initially do not seem to fit together. But then large lime blocks appear as well. Many of them are decorated with relief. They come from a temple. There can only be one explanation.
So there happened to be ceramics ovens in both these courtyards, with large heaps of limestone next to them. And we wanted a joint explanation for this state of affairs, to find a functional connection. So initially we thought in terms of lime kilns.
Was Heliopolis turning into a flourishing production site for building materials? With the destruction of the temple district, there would have been plenty of stone blocks as raw material. The production of mortar by burning limestone was already common practice at the time. But these ovens would not have generated sufficient heat. The archaeologists decide that they are baking ovens, producing bread for the ever-growing population. The lime fragments only prove that the City of the Sun had ultimately been demolished in 150 BC. By whom still remains a mystery. Nevertheless, the myth surrounding the City of the Sun lives on. The Romans arrived to visit the tourist attraction. They only know about Heliopolis from old stories. Around the year 0, the temple city is finally abandoned, and it disintegrates.
The enduring fascination, when you work in a place like that, is the sheer duration of time. We are looking at 3,000 years. For at least 2,400 of them, this one kingdom is focused on this location. It is as if one of today's leaders were to go to a place built 400 years before Christ to ask for a blessing for his reign.
The ruins stood for another 1,000 years. People used the site as a quarry. Finally, with the growth of Cairo, old Heliopolis irrevocably disappears. But the memory of the resplendent city of the gods endures for millennia. One of the last wastelands is in the center of Cairo. A little time still remains for the archaeologists before the building firms arrive with their heavy machinery. That's when the old City of the Sun will be permanently buried under new structures. But thanks to the dedicated work of the researchers, Heliopolis will never be forgotten.